about...
Cornelius Fudge himself.
Don't boast, Draco.
It's the Irish. Let's try.
This is the best secret in the world.
World Cup.
He's an artist.
Think you're in love, Ron.
What is that? Voldemort. Who? Second thought, just the jewels. Just the jewels. Oh no, I'm Vicky.
It's hurting again, isn't it?
There is special guests as well. Trust me when I say...
It's him. Viktor Krum.
A door creaks open in the dead of night. An old man steps into an abandoned house, carrying nothing but a weak lantern and a terrible feeling that someone is waiting upstairs. Voices murmur beyond a closed room. One belongs to a trembling servant. The other is cold, thin, almost inhuman. Before the old man can escape, a flash of green light tears through the darkness. Far away, Harry Potter bolts awake, his scar burning as though a blade has been pressed against his skin. The dream fades. The fear does not. Harry is staying with the Weasley family, where warmth, noise, and friendly chaos make the nightmare feel less real. For once, the summer holds something worth celebrating. The Quidditch World Cup. Thousands of witches and wizards gather beneath the open sky, their tents hiding magical rooms, floating decorations, and excited families from every corner of the wizarding world. Harry watches the match beside Ron and Hermione, surrounded by roaring crowds and streaks of color. For a few dazzling hours, he forgets the graveyard voice, the green light, and the pain in his scar. Then the screaming begins. Masked figures move through the campsite, lifting terrified people into the air and twisting them like puppets. Flames swallow tents. Families run blindly through the smoke. Harry, Ron, and Hermione race into the forest, branches clawing at their clothes as explosions thunder behind them. Somewhere in the darkness, Harry realizes his wand is missing. Before he can search for it, a stranger raises a wand toward the sky. A green serpent erupts above the trees, sliding from the mouth of a giant skull, the Dark Mark. The symbol left wherever Voldemort's followers brought death. Ministry officials storm the forest and find Harry standing close to the place where the mark appeared. His missing wand is recovered from a house elf, and suspicion spreads faster than the fire outside. No one openly accuses Harry, but their eyes linger on him. He feels it. Something has shifted. The followers of the darkest wizard in history are no longer only memories whispered by frightened adults. They are moving again. And somehow, Harry's wand has been pulled into their warning. When the students return to Hogwarts, The castle should feel safe. Instead, the air carries an unfamiliar electricity. Professor Dumbledore announces that Hogwarts will host the Triwizard Tournament, an ancient competition between three magical schools. One champion from each school will face dangerous tasks requiring courage, intelligence, and skill. The reward is glory and 1,000 galleons. But the warning beneath Dumbledore's words is impossible to miss. Competitors have died before. This year, only students aged 17 or older may enter. Soon, the visiting schools arrive. The students of Beauxbatons sweep into the Great Hall with graceful confidence, led by the elegant Fleur Delacour. Durmstrang follows with heavy footsteps and sparks of fire, bringing the famous Quidditch player Viktor Krum. Ron can barely speak when he sees his hero. Harry watches the older students with quiet admiration, relieved that the tournament belongs to them. He has faced monsters, murderers, and memories that could kill. But this time, danger has an age limit. This time, he can remain in the crowd. The new defense against the dark arts teacher makes that hope feel fragile. Alistair Moody enters with a scarred face, a wooden leg, and one magical eye that spins independently inside his head. He teaches the students about curses so dark that using them can lead to imprisonment for life. A spider dances against its will. Another is tortured until its legs curl beneath its body. The final curse kills instantly. Green light. No wound. No chance to fight back. Harry stares at the lifeless spider, his stomach tightening as the nightmare returns. At the center of the Great Hall, the Goblet of Fire burns with blue-white flames. Students old enough to compete place their names inside, each hoping to be chosen. Fred and George attempt to trick the enchanted age line and are thrown backward, instantly growing long white beards. Everyone laughs, even Harry. Yet when the night of selection arrives, the laughter disappears. The goblet turns red and spits out the name of the Durmstrang champion, Viktor Krum. Then Fleur Delacour for Beauxbatons. Finally, Cedric Diggory is chosen for Hogwarts. 3 champions. The decision is complete. But the goblet does not go dark. Its flames rise again, brighter and more violent than before. A 4th piece of parchment shoots into Dumbledore's hand. He unfolds it, and the entire hall seems to stop breathing. Harry watches the headmaster's expression change. Confusion first, then something colder. Dumbledore reads the final name, Harry Potter. Harry remains frozen as hundreds of faces turn toward him. Ron's smile vanishes. Hermione's eyes widen. Teachers exchange alarmed glances. Harry never entered. He is too young. Yet the magical contract has already chosen him, and somewhere beyond the candlelight, someone has just placed a 14-year-old boy inside a tournament built to kill. For one long second, Harry cannot move. The Great Hall feels enormous and airless, every candle burning above him like an accusing eye. Then voices erupt from every table. Some students whisper that he cheated. Others stare with open admiration. Harry hears none of it clearly. His own name keeps echoing inside his head, impossible and undeniable. Dumbledore calls him forward. Harry walks between the tables while hundreds of faces follow him. Cedric watches in stunned silence. Ron does not look proud anymore. He looks hurt. That hurts more than the suspicion in the room. Behind the Great Hall, the 3 chosen champions wait inside a smaller chamber. Viktor Krum stands with his arms folded. Fleur Delacour looks irritated when Harry enters, assuming he has come to deliver a message. Cedric understands first. His expression tightens. Then the adults arrive. Madame Maxime and Igor Karkaroff demand answers. Hogwarts cannot have 2 champions. Harry is underage. The rules have been broken. But the Goblet of Fire is not a simple selection device. It creates a binding magical contract. Once a name is chosen, that person must compete. Must. Harry insists he never entered. Dumbledore asks him directly whether he placed his name in the goblet or asked an older student to do it. Harry says no. Professor Snape watches him as though every word is a lie, but Moody studies the situation differently. Someone may have bewitched the goblet into believing 4 schools were competing, then entered Harry beneath a false school name. That would require powerful magic and a reason. A tournament with deadly tasks has just become a perfect trap. The news spreads through Hogwarts before Harry reaches his dormitory. By morning, students are wearing enchanted badges that flash between support for Cedric and cruel insults aimed at Harry. Hufflepuffs believe he stole their champion's glory. Ravenclaws think he wants attention. Slytherins do not bother hiding their delight. But none of that compares to Ron. Harry expects disbelief, perhaps anger for a few minutes, then understanding. Instead, Ron assumes Harry entered secretly and refused to share how. Years of friendship suddenly buckle beneath one ugly thought. Harry wanted more fame. Harry tries to explain. Ron's jaw hardens. He says Harry always finds a way to become the center of everything. The words land quietly, almost casually, but they cut deeper than any spell. Harry leaves before Ron can see how badly they hurt. Hermione believes him. She sits beside Harry in the library, surrounded by towers of books, searching for anything that might explain the tournament's first task. But the champions are not supposed to know what awaits them. That secrecy is part of the danger. Harry's nights grow worse. His scar aches. The old nightmare returns in broken flashes, a dark room, a weak body, a voice promising murder. He wakes with cold sweat on his face and the sound of Ron breathing from the other side of the dormitory. They are only a few beds apart, yet the distance feels wider than the castle grounds. Then Hagrid sends Harry a message, telling him to come to his hut after dark. Harry follows him beneath an invisibility cloak, confused as Hagrid leads him beyond the edge of the forest. Madame Maxime is there too, though she pretends the meeting is accidental. Hagrid guides them toward a hidden enclosure glowing with fire. A roar shakes the trees. Harry looks through the branches and sees 4 enormous dragons chained inside the valley. Their wings beat against the night. Flames blast across the ground. One snaps at a handler and nearly tears him in half. Hagrid gazes at the creatures with wonder, but Harry feels his stomach drop. 4 dragons, 4 champions. The first task is suddenly obvious. Each competitor will have to face one. Now Harry knows the danger, but knowledge brings no comfort. He returns to the castle with only a few days to prepare and no idea how to survive. Hermione suggests spells. Books offer theories. Nothing feels enough. Harry can barely summon objects across a classroom, and soon he will stand alone before a creature that can crush stone beneath its claws. Still, he tells Cedric. He could remain silent and gain an advantage. For one bitter moment, the thought tempts him. Cedric is older, stronger, and the school's rightful champion. But Harry knows what it feels like to be pushed into danger without warning. He cannot do that to someone else. Cedric thanks him and quietly reveals that Fleur and Krum already know. Harry realizes the tournament is filled with secret alliances, hidden information, and adults bending rules behind polite smiles. Moody offers the final piece. Harry does not need to defeat a dragon. He needs to use his greatest strength. Flying. With Hermione's help, Harry practices the summoning charm until his throat aches and his wand arm goes numb. Again and again, he calls objects toward him. Again and again, they fall short. Then the morning of the task arrives. Harry enters the champion's tent and draws a miniature dragon from a bag. The Hungarian horntail. The most vicious of them all. Outside, thousands of students are waiting. The ground trembles beneath a roar, and Harry hears chains scraping across stone. He grips his wand, steps toward the arena, and realizes one thing with terrifying clarity. The dragon is guarding an egg. And to stay alive, Harry must steal it. The horn sounds. Harry steps into the arena and the crowd's roar collapses into a distant blur. Across the scorched ground, the Hungarian horntail crouches over a nest of eggs. Black scales gleaming like armor. Smoke leaks from its nostrils. Its spiked tail cuts through the air and smashes a boulder into fragments. Harry raises his wand. Accio Firebolt! Nothing happens. The dragon lunges. Harry throws himself aside as flames wash over the place where he stood. Heat claws across his face. For one sickening moment, he thinks the spell has failed. Then a dark shape tears over the castle walls. His broom. Harry jumps onto it and rises just as the horntail's jaws snap beneath his boots. In the air, fear becomes instinct. The arena disappears. There is only wind, speed, and the familiar pressure of the broom beneath his hands. He circles the dragon, forcing it to turn away from the nest. The horntail follows, furious, dragging chains through the dirt. Harry climbs higher. The dragon spreads its wings. It breaks free. Now the chase explodes beyond the arena. Harry dives between towers while the horntail crashes through rooftops behind him. Stone fragments rain into the courtyards. Claws scrape against the castle walls. Fire burst past his shoulder so closely that his robes begin to smoke. Then Harry drops. The dragon follows. At the last second, he pulls upward. The horntail slams into a bridge, tangled and stunned. Harry races back to the arena, skims above the ground, and snatches the golden egg from the nest. The crowd erupts. When Harry returns to the common room, he is no longer the boy who cheated his way into the tournament. He is the boy who faced a dragon and survived. Even Ron finally understands. No one would willingly volunteer for that. He approaches Harry awkwardly, unable to form a proper apology. Harry does not need one. The anger drains from him, leaving only relief. Their friendship, stretched almost to breaking, holds. But victory brings another problem. The golden egg contains a clue to the second task. When Harry opens it, a terrible shriek fills the room. Students cover their ears. Neville nearly falls from his chair. Whatever message is hidden inside sounds less like guidance and more like something dying. Weeks pass. Harry makes no progress. Then Professor McGonagall announces the Yule Ball, a formal Christmas dance held as part of the tournament. Every champion must attend with a partner and open the dancing before the entire school. Harry would rather face the dragon again. He wants to ask Cho Chang, the Ravenclaw girl, whose smile makes every prepared sentence vanish from his mind. Each time he sees her, he hesitates. Other students pair off. Time closes around him. Finally, Harry corners Cho near the owlery and forces out the question. She listens kindly, then tells him she has already agreed to go with Cedric. The rejection is gentle. It still burns. Ron's situation is worse. He mocks Hermione for caring about the ball, then realizes too late that she might actually go with someone else. Desperate, Harry and Ron ask the Paddle twins. Parvati agrees to accompany Harry. Padma reluctantly goes with Ron. On the night of the ball, the Great Hall has become a frozen palace. Silver frost covers the walls. Enchanted snow falls without melting. Students descend the staircase in elegant robes, almost unrecognizable. Then Hermione appears. Her hair is smooth, her dress catches the candlelight, and the entire hall seems to pause. She is not walking toward Ron. Viktor Krum waits for her. Ron's face hardens. Jealousy twists every word he speaks. Instead of admitting that he cares, he accuses Hermione of helping the enemy. Her happiness disappears. By the end of the night, she is shouting through tears that Ron should have asked her first instead of treating her as a last resort. Harry sits between the wreckage of their feelings, unable to fix either side. Later, Cedric quietly pulls him aside. Repaying the warning about the dragons, he tells Harry to take the golden egg into the prefect's bathroom and listen to it underwater. Harry follows the advice. Beneath the surface, the screaming transforms into a haunting song. The clue warns that something precious will be taken from each champion and hidden where human voices cannot be heard. The Black Lake. Harry searches for a way to breathe underwater, but every spell seems too difficult, too dangerous, or too slow. On the morning of the second task, he wakes in the library with only minutes remaining. Dobby stands beside him, holding a slimy green plant, gillyweed. Harry races to the lake, swallows it, and dives. Pain grips his throat. His lungs seize. Then gills tear open along his neck, webbing spreads between his fingers, and the dark water becomes clear. Deep below, merpeople guard 4 unconscious prisoners, Cho, Hermione, Ron, and a small girl Harry has never seen. Harry cuts Ron free, but the others remain tied. The champions are supposed to save only one person each. Yet as the minutes pass, Harry looks into the black water and realizes Fleur has not arrived. Her little sister is still waiting, and Harry cannot leave a child behind. Harry waits. The cold presses into his bones while the merpeople circle impatiently. Ron hangs unconscious beside the other captives, his red hair drifting in the current. Cedric arrives first and frees Cho. Krum appears moments later, his head transformed into the jaws of a shark, and cuts Hermione loose. But Fleur never comes. The merpeople warn Harry that the hour is almost over. Their spears lower, their faces harden. The little girl's silver hair floats around her frightened face, and Harry makes his choice. He cuts both Ron and the child free. The merpeople try to stop him. Harry fires a spell through the water, scattering them long enough to drag both captives upward. His gills are already closing. The surface looks impossibly far away. His chest tightens. Ron's weight pulls on one arm, the child on the other. Then sunlight breaks above him. Harry bursts from the lake, gasping as the crowd erupts. Fleur rushes forward. sobbing as she embraces her sister. Harry finishes last, but the judges award him extra points for courage. He did not follow the task perfectly. He did something better. For a few days, the tournament almost feels less dangerous. Harry has survived dragons and the Black Lake. The final task is still ahead, but summer light returns to Hogwarts, and students begin whispering that he might actually win. Then death enters the castle grounds. Harry, Ron, and Hermione visit Hagrid and discover Minister Barty Crouch wandering near the forest, filthy, trembling, and speaking to people who are not there. He begs to see Dumbledore. His words come in broken pieces. Danger, betrayal, a mistake that must be corrected. Harry runs to fetch the headmaster. When he returns, Crouch is gone. Only a shadow moves between the trees. The disappearance unsettles everyone, but no body is found. No explanation follows. Harry's scar begins burning more often, and his dreams become clearer. Voldemort is waiting for something. Someone close to Harry is helping him. The third task is revealed. A vast maze grown on the Quidditch pitch. The Triwizard Cup will stand at its center. The first champion to reach it will win. Harry and Cedric enter with the highest scores. The hedge is close behind them. Inside, the cheering disappears. The maze swallows every sound. Mist crawls over the ground. Branches shift when no one is looking. Harry hears distant screams, then silence. Creatures attack from the dark. Paths change without warning. Fleur's scream cuts through the maze. Harry runs toward it but finds only empty grass. Soon afterward, Krum appears. His movements are stiff. His eyes are blank. Without warning, he attacks Cedric. Harry realizes Krum is under the Imperious Curse. Together, Harry and Cedric stop him, but the truth is worse than the attack. Someone is controlling the tournament from inside the maze. They press forward. Near the center, a giant spider lunges from the hedges and drags Cedric toward the darkness. Harry could keep running. The cup is only moments away. Victory is finally within reach. Instead, he turns back. He blasts the creature away and pulls Cedric to safety. Both boys reach the clearing together. The Triwizard Cup gleams on a pedestal between them. Cedric tells Harry to take it. Harry refuses. Cedric was Hogwarts' real champion. They argue, exhausted and bruised, until Harry offers a simple answer. Together, they place their hands on the cup at the same moment. The world twists. Harry's feet leave the ground. Wind tears past his ears. Then he crashes onto cold earth beneath the black sky. This is not the Quidditch pitch. Cedric rises beside him, confused. A graveyard stretches around them. Broken statues lean over ancient tombs. In the distance stands a ruined house Harry recognizes from his dreams. His scar explodes with pain. A hooded figure approaches, carrying something small and wrapped in cloth. Harry reaches for his wand. A high, weak voice speaks from the bundle. "Kill the spare." Green light flashes. Cedric falls before he can scream. Harry stares at the body, waiting for him to move. He does not. A second figure steps from the shadows. Wormtail, the man who betrayed Harry's parents. He drags Harry toward a gravestone and binds him tightly against it. Then he places the bundle inside a boiling cauldron. Bone from the grave, flesh from the servant, blood from the enemy. Wormtail cuts Harry's arm and lets the blood fall into the potion. The cauldron erupts. A tall figure rises from the smoke, pale, thin, with red eyes and no human warmth left in his face. Lord Voldemort has returned. Voldemort steps from the cauldron as though death itself has learned to walk. Steam coils around his thin body. His fingers flex. His red eyes settle on Harry, and a smile spreads across the face that has haunted every nightmare. Wormtail kneels, bleeding where his own hand once was. Voldemort barely looks at him. With a flick of his wand, he summons a silver replacement, then turns toward the darkness surrounding the graveyard. One by one, masked figures appear. Death Eaters. They form a circle, heads bowed, robes whispering over the grass. Voldemort moves among them, naming their failures, their cowardice, their years of pretending loyalty had died with him. No one dares answer. Harry strains against the ropes, Cedric's body lying only a few feet away. The sight of it burns worse than the cut on his arm. Voldemort tells them how he survived without a body, how he waited in the shadows, how servants finally restored him. Then he speaks of Harry, the child who should have died, the boy whose blood now flows inside Voldemort's reborn body. He wants no doubt left among his followers. He will kill Harry himself. The ropes vanish. Harry falls forward, numb fingers closing around his wand. Voldemort orders the Death Eaters not to interfere. This is not a duel between equals. It is an execution disguised as sport. Voldemort bows mockingly. Harry barely raises his wand before the first curse strikes. Pain tears through every nerve. His body folds into the dirt. He cannot breathe, cannot think. The graveyard fills with laughter. Then the pain stops. Voldemort commands him to stand. Harry's legs shake, but he rises. Running would change nothing. Begging would change nothing. Cedric is dead. His parents are dead. And Voldemort is waiting for him to collapse. Harry grips his wand tighter. The next curse misses as he dives behind a gravestone. Stone explodes above his head. Dust fills his mouth. Voldemort circles slowly, promising that Harry will die exactly as his parents did. Harry closes his eyes for half a second. This is the end. Except something inside him refuses to stay hidden. He steps from behind the grave and faces Voldemort. Both wands fire. Red light and green light collide in midair. Instead of destroying each other, the spells lock together, forming a blazing connection between the two wands. A golden cage rises around them. The Death Eaters step back. Voldemort's smile disappears. The wands are resisting. Harry feels the force pushing toward him, heavy and merciless. His arms tremble. The connection begins sliding closer. If it reaches his wand, he knows he will die. So he pushes back. The beam moves toward Voldemort. A strange sound fills the graveyard, distant singing, high and powerful. Then shapes begin emerging from Voldemort's wand, the people he murdered. Cedric appears first, pale but calm. He looks at Harry and asks him to take his body back. Then an old man rises from the light, another victim, another stolen life. Finally, Harry sees them, his mother, his father. They stand between him and the killer who took them away. They are not truly alive, yet for one impossible moment, Harry is no longer alone. His mother tells him to hold on. His father says they will give him time. Harry's throat closes. He wants to stay, just one more second, one more word. But the shadows circle Voldemort, distracting him. Now, James says. Harry breaks the connection. The graveyard erupts. He runs. Curses tear past him as he races toward Cedric's body. One blasts the earth beside his hand. Another scorches his robes. Harry throws himself down, grabs Cedric's wrist, and stretches for the Triwizard Cup. His fingers touch the handle. The portkey drags them away. Harry crashes back onto the Hogwarts grounds with Cedric beside him. For a heartbeat, the watching crowd erupts in celebration. Music plays. Teachers rise from their seats. Then the cheers begin to die. Harry is clutching Cedric's body. He cannot let go. Dumbledore reaches him first. Harry tries to explain, but the words tumble out in broken pieces. Voldemort. The graveyard. Cedric. He says it again and again, as though repeating the truth might force everyone to understand. Cedric's father pushes through the crowd. The sound he makes when he sees his son is not a scream. It is something lower. Something torn from a place where language no longer exists. Moody pulls Harry away before the ministry officials can surround him. He leads him into the castle, speaking softly, telling him he is safe. But Harry notices the door locking behind them. Moody asks what happened in the graveyard. Harry tells him about the portkey, the ritual, the Death Eaters. Moody listens with growing excitement. Too much excitement. Then he asks whether the cup transported Harry exactly as planned. Harry looks up. Moody knows. He knows the maze was bewitched. He knows Krum was controlled. He knows the cup was turned into a portkey. Moody's magical eye spins toward the door, checking for witnesses. Then he raises his wand and smiles. The teacher who protected Harry all year was never protecting him. He was delivering him. Harry's hand tightens around his wand, but Moody moves first. A spell blasts Harry backward. His shoulder slams into the wall and the room spins. Moody limps closer, breathing fast, eyes shining with triumph. All year, he says, he guided Harry through every task. He showed him how to summon the broom. He gave hints that led to the lake. He cleared paths inside the maze and bewitched the cup. Every narrow escape was arranged. Every victory pushed Harry closer to the graveyard. Moody raises his wand for the final curse. The door explodes inward. Dumbledore enters with Snape and McGonagall behind him. His face is calm, but the air around him changes. Heavy. Dangerous. Moody barely turns before Dumbledore strikes. One flash. Moody crashes to the floor. Harry has never seen the headmaster look so furious. Snape searches the room while McGonagall helps Harry stand. Dumbledore examines the unconscious teacher, then opens a locked trunk against the wall. Inside, beneath layers of magical compartments, a weak voice calls from the darkness. They find the real Alastor Moody imprisoned at the bottom. The man on the floor begins to change. His scarred face melts. The wooden leg disappears. Dark hair grows from his head. When the transformation stops, Harry sees someone he does not recognize. Barty Crouch Jr., the son of the missing ministry official. Snape finds a flask filled with polyjuice potion. Crouch has been drinking it constantly, wearing Moody's face, teaching his classes, earning everyone's trust. He escaped prison and returned to the master he worshipped. Every lesson, every warning, every act of protection was part of the disguise. Under questioning, Crouch confesses everything. He placed Harry's name into the Goblet of Fire. He controlled Krum. He removed obstacles from the maze. He transformed the Triwizard Cup into a portkey. His only purpose was to send Harry to Voldemort. The truth should bring relief. It does not. Cedric is still dead. Voldemort is still alive. And Harry's blood now runs through the body of the man who murdered his parents. The Minister for Magic arrives, but before Dumbledore can question Crouch publicly, a Dementor enters with him and sucks out the prisoner's soul. The only witness who could prove Voldemort's return is left empty and silent. Minister Fudge refuses to accept Harry's story. He calls the graveyard a confused memory produced by fear. He insists Voldemort cannot be back. The alternative would mean panic, war, and the collapse of everything the Ministry claims to control. Dumbledore does not bend. He warns Fudge that denial will not stop what is coming. The old alliances must be rebuilt. Former supporters of Voldemort must be watched. Those who can fight must prepare. Fudge hears only a challenge to his authority. He leaves Hogwarts angry, carrying the truth away like something shameful. Later, Harry sits alone in the hospital wing. His wounds have been cleaned. The cut on his arm is covered. None of it matters. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees green light striking Cedric. Mrs. Weasley comes to him. She does not ask questions. She simply holds him. For a few seconds, Harry remains stiff, almost frightened by the comfort. Then everything he has been forcing down breaks loose. His breath catches. His hands shake. He presses his face against her shoulder, and the grief he could not release in the graveyard finally tears through him. Dumbledore waits until Harry can speak. He explains that Voldemort and Harry's wands share cores taken from the same phoenix. When forced against each other, they created a rare connection, causing Voldemort's wand to reveal echoes of its victims. That is why Harry saw his parents. Not ghosts, not resurrection, echoes. Harry nods, but the explanation cannot reduce what the moment meant. For the first time since he was a baby, he heard their voices. They stood beside him when he believed he was going to die. At the end-of-year feast, the Great Hall is quiet. Dumbledore refuses to hide the truth. He tells the students Cedric was murdered by Voldemort. Fear spreads across the room, but so does understanding. Cedric did not die because of a tournament accident. He died because he was brave, loyal, and standing beside Harry when darkness returned. The banners lower. Students raise their goblets. Harry looks toward the empty seat where Cedric should have been. The battle in the graveyard is over. The war has just begun. Morning comes to Hogwarts, but the castle no longer feels untouched. Sunlight spills through tall windows, warming the stone, while students pack trunks and whisper about what happened. No one speaks too loudly. Cedric's death has changed the rhythm of every hallway. The tournament decorations remain, but now they look like pieces from a celebration that belonged to another life. Harry moves among his classmates with the strange feeling that he returned from the graveyard without truly leaving it. A sudden laugh makes him flinch. A flash of green cloth becomes a curse in the corner of his eye. He is alive, yet part of him still kneels beside Cedric beneath that black sky. Ron and Hermione stay close. They do not force Harry to speak, and that kindness matters more than questions. Ron's earlier jealousy feels small now, almost shameful, but Harry does not hold it against him. They sit together beside the lake, watching sunlight tremble across the water, where the second task once seemed like the greatest danger in the world. Hermione breaks the silence first. She says the Ministry will try to control the story. They will call Harry confused, Dumbledore reckless, and Cedric's death an accident. Ron clenches his jaw. Harry says nothing. He already understands. Voldemort has returned, and the people responsible for protecting everyone are more frightened of the truth than the enemy. Across the grounds, the visiting schools prepare to leave. Fleur finds Harry before boarding her carriage. Her little sister holds tightly to her hand, the same child Harry refused to abandon beneath the lake. Fleur thanks him again, but this time there is no competition in her voice, only quiet respect. Viktor Krum approaches Hermione and says goodbye, while Ron watches with obvious discomfort. Yet he does not interrupt. Not this time. Hermione smiles, and something unspoken passes between her and Ron. Not a confession, not yet, but the beginning of honesty. Harry sees Cedric's father standing alone near the edge of the crowd. The man appears older than he did days before, shoulders bent beneath a weight no magic can lift. Harry wants to approach him. He wants to apologize for surviving. His feet refuse to move. Dumbledore joins Harry instead. He tells him that guilt often searches for a reason, even when no reason exists. Cedric chose to help. Harry chose to return for him. The blame belongs only to the one who murdered him. Harry listens, but grief does not obey logic. It sits in his chest, heavy and silent. Dumbledore does not promise safety. That would be a lie. He tells Harry that difficult times are coming and that everyone will soon face a choice between what is right and what is easy. The Ministry has chosen what is easy. Others will follow. But some will stand against the darkness, even when standing costs them everything. At the farewell gathering, students from all three schools crowd the courtyard. The rivalries that once filled the tournament feel distant now. Dumbledore reminds them that Voldemort's greatest weapon is division. Fear isolates. Suspicion turns friends into enemies. The only answer is unity. Harry understands because he has already lived the warning. Ron's jealousy left him alone. Secrets push champions against one another. A trusted teacher wore the face of an enemy. Voldemort did not return through strength alone. He returned through fear, deception, and people refusing to see what was in front of them. The carriages depart. The Durmstrang ship sinks beneath the lake. The Bogsbaten's horses rise into the sky, their wings carrying the students away from Hogwarts. Harry, Ron, and Hermione watch from a high window. Hermione looks at the empty grounds and quietly asks whether everything will be different now. Harry thinks of the graveyard. Cedric's final request. His mother's voice, his father telling him when to run. He thinks of Voldemort standing alive beneath the stars, surrounded by followers who had been waiting years to kneel again. Yes, Harry says. The word is soft, but there is no fear inside it now. Below them, the last carriage disappears beyond the gates. Summer is beginning. War is approaching, and somewhere in the distance the Dark Lord believes Harry Potter is still only a boy who escaped him. He is wrong. The most important thing Mike Newell brought to Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was not experience with fantasy. He had almost none. What he brought was an understanding of disorder, teenage disorder, institutional disorder, and the frightening moment when a protected childhood world stops feeling safe. The first three Potter films had gradually opened Hogwarts beyond simple wonder, but Newell pushed the door off its hinges. Under his direction, the school becomes louder, rougher, and emotionally unstable. Students quarrel, teachers bark, hormones scramble friendships, and death no longer waits politely outside the castle gates. Magic remains everywhere. Innocence does not. Newell was a curious choice for a production of this scale. His best-known films included the socially observant romantic comedy Four Weddings and A Funeral, the intimate crime drama Donnie Brasco, and the character-driven period piece Mona Lisa Smile. He was skilled with actors, embarrassment, social tension, and people trapped inside systems larger than themselves. Giant dragons and underwater kingdoms were another matter. Newell admitted that he had never directed anything remotely as large as the fourth Potter film. Yet that risk attracted him. The project scared him. Good. Fear sharpened the film. What convinced him was the machinery hidden beneath J.K. Rowling's enormous novel. Warner Brothers had considered whether the book might require 2 films, but Newell believed its essential narrative could survive as one. He saw a classical conspiracy thriller, even comparing its structure to Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. An ordinary hero is pushed into danger without understanding who is manipulating events. while the audience senses a larger villain moving behind the curtain. Harry is not pursuing adventure here. Adventure has selected him, placed his name inside the goblet, and begun closing every exit. That interpretation explains the movie's relentless forward momentum. The Quidditch World Cup erupts and collapses. Foreign schools arrive. The goblet chooses Harry. One tournament task barrels into another, while fragments of Voldemort's return gather at the edges. Newell wanted anything that did not strengthen the thriller spine removed, a decision that gave the film tremendous energy, but also created many of its adaptation problems. Whole relationships and mysteries rush past before they can breathe. Yet the velocity has purpose. Harry rarely receives enough time to understand one danger before the next begins. Confusion becomes the film's governing sensation. Newell's British background also shaped Hogwarts differently from the approaches of Chris Columbus and Alfonso Cuarón. He had grown up with British school stories and remembered school as a contained society governed by intimidating authority figures, unwritten hierarchies, and bursts of anarchy. To him, school could be terrifying and hilarious within the same minute, a miniature version of adulthood where children practiced surviving the wider world. That memory lives in the film's crowded corridors, explosive classrooms, and casually physical comedy. Hogwarts feels less like a sacred fantasy monument and more like a chaotic institution full of adolescents who happen to carry weapons in their pockets. And here is where Newell's supposedly mismatched resume becomes the film's secret weapon. The Triwizard Tournament provides scale, but the Yule Ball provides humanity. Harry facing a dragon is spectacular. Harry attempting to ask Cho Chang to a dance is agony. Ron can confront dark magic, yet remains helpless before jealousy. Hermione's entrance at the ball lands because Newell understands social revelation. The instant familiar people suddenly see one another differently. The comedy never cancels the darkness. It delays it, allowing the characters to behave like awkward children immediately before the story demands that they confront adult cruelty. His direction is not always graceful. Emotional reactions can be pushed too loudly, and the film occasionally mistakes frantic movement for tension. The most famous example is Dumbledore's aggressive confrontation after Harry's name emerges from the goblet, a moment whose force clashes with the character's customary composure. But even that controversial choice belongs to Newell's broader vision. This Hogwarts is losing control. Adults panic. Rules fail. The institution that promised protection cannot explain what is happening inside its own walls. The creative partnership surrounding him kept that vision connected to the larger series. Producer David Heyman remained the franchise's central guardian, Warner Brothers backed the production, and screenwriter Steve Kloves worked closely with Newell to compress Rowling's sprawling fourth novel. Released on November 18, 2005, the result became the point where Harry Potter stopped being primarily a magical school adventure and transformed into a wartime story wearing the costume of a tournament thriller. Newell's achievement was not making the wizarding world bigger. The production resources could handle that. His achievement was making it feel less secure. Beneath the dragons, dances, and spectacles sits a simple, brutal transition. Childhood is ending, whether Harry is ready or not. But that transformation depended on ruthless choices about what survived from the novel and what was sacrificed. The blueprint of those choices begins with Steve Kloves and one of the most difficult adaptation jobs in blockbuster history. A director can decide what a film should feel like, but somebody still has to fit the machinery onto the page. For Steve Kloves, Goblet of Fire was the assignment where adaptation stopped meaning careful reduction and started resembling controlled demolition. The fourth novel introduces international wizarding culture, a major sporting event, 3 tournament challenges, government corruption, house elf politics, romantic jealousy, multiple false suspects, and the return of Voldemort. Almost every subplot connects to another. Remove the wrong thread and the mystery collapses. Kloves spent roughly 2 years wrestling that material into screenplay form, later describing it as an unusually difficult experience. He was not approaching the series as an outsider. Kloves had written the first 3 Potter screenplays and arrived at the franchise after adapting Michael Chabon's Wonder Boys. His relationship with J.K. Rowling gave him freedom, but also a clear responsibility. Rowling understood that the films could not reproduce the books literally. Her central request was that the characters remain truthful. She would occasionally alert Kloves when an apparently disposable detail carried future importance, without fully revealing where the unfinished series was heading. Imagine writing around secrets the author refuses to explain. Every cut becomes a gamble. For a time, the obvious solution was to divide Goblet of Fire into 2 movies. That would eventually become standard franchise practice, but in 2005 it carried real risks. Where would the first film end? The arrival of the schools? The Yule Ball? The second task? None provides a satisfying climax, because Rowling designed the entire year as one tightening trap. Kloves and Newell therefore committed to a single film and identified the Triwizard Tournament as its structural spine. Everything either pushes Harry toward the graveyard or gets out of the way. Efficient? Absolutely. Painless? Not even close. The opening announces this ruthlessness immediately. The novel spends time with the Dursleys, the Weasleys' chaotic attempt to collect Harry and the full Quidditch World Cup. The film jumps from Voldemort's gathering at the Riddle House to Harry's arrival with the Weasleys, then offers only the dazzling entrance to the match before cutting directly to its violent aftermath. Thousands of spectators, weeks of anticipation, one enormous stadium, and not a second of actual play. It feels almost mischievous. Yet the omission tells us what Kloves values, not the match, but the dark mark above the campsite. Celebration exists only long enough to be contaminated. Other removals are more damaging. Ludo Bagman disappears entirely, taking the gambling subplot and one of the novel's principal red herrings with him. Winky is gone, which strips away much of the Barty Crouch family tragedy. Hermione's campaign for house elf rights vanishes, as does Rita Skeeter's eventual exposure as an unregistered animagus. Dobby's contribution to the second task is transferred to Neville. Each choice saves time and combines functions, but the accumulated loss makes the world feel narrower. In the book, corruption spreads through families, newspapers, institutions, and ordinary prejudice. In the film, most roads lead directly to one disguised villain. That alteration changes the mystery itself. Rowling conceals Barty Crouch Jr. beneath layers of testimony, family shame, and misdirection. The movie shows him beside Voldemort during the opening scene and places him at the Quidditch World Cup. His repeated tongue movement then becomes a visual clue connecting him to Mad-Eye Moody. Subtle? Hardly. Effective? Yes. Kloves trades the novel's elaborate detective puzzle for dramatic irony. The audience knows a dangerous young man is loose, but not how he has entered Hogwarts or why Harry is being protected through the tournament. The question shifts from who to how close is he? The screenplay's strongest invention is its collision between mortal danger and adolescent humiliation. Kloves described the film as social comedy as much as fantasy, treating the characters' changing relationships as the true dividing line in the series. The tournament gives Harry external trials. The Yule Ball gives everyone internal ones. Ron's jealousy over Harry's unwanted fame mutates into jealousy over Hermione. Harry can summon a broom while facing a dragon, but cannot form a complete sentence around Cho. That contrast is not filler between action sequences. It is the point. Growing up means discovering that emotional exposure can feel more terrifying than physical danger. Still, the compression leaves bruises. Ron and Harry's estrangement begins explosively and resolves almost as soon as the first task ends. Cedric remains decent and likable, but receives limited interior life before the story asks his death to devastate us. The political consequences of Voldemort's return are barely established, weakening the transition into the Ministry's campaign against Harry in the next film. Kloves protects the main emotional route, yet several supporting roads simply stop. The movie moves beautifully while moving. Pause to ask how every mechanism works, and the seams become visible. The script also continued changing after filming had begun. Kloves recalled that Newell reviewed footage and chose to strengthen particular plot lines, leading to meticulous rewrites. The screenwriter was still supplying lines during June and July. That fluidity helps explain the finished film's strange electricity. It feels engineered and impulsive at once. a carefully compressed thriller constantly interrupted by teenage panic. The final line, asking whether everything will change, does more than close the school year. It states the screenplay's entire purpose. Childhood ends here. But words only become characters once actors inhabit them, and the newcomers chosen for this chapter would permanently alter the chemistry of Hogwarts. Words only become characters once actors inhabit them, and Goblet of Fire demanded more new faces than any previous Potter film. The challenge was not simply finding performers who resembled Rowling's descriptions. Each newcomer had to arrive carrying an entire world: Boggs Baton's, Durmstrang, the Ministry's buried scandals, and Voldemort's returning army. Casting director Fiona Weir helped build that expanded ensemble, while Mike Newell searched for actors capable of cutting through a story already crowded with familiar personalities. The established trio could rely on 3 films of audience affection. The newcomers sometimes had only minutes to become unforgettable. The most consequential decision was Ralph Fiennes as Lord Voldemort. Until this point, the series had treated its central villain as a fragmented presence, a whisper beneath a turban, a face inside a memory, a name that frightened rooms into silence. Goblet of Fire needed to turn that mythology into flesh without making him ordinary. Newell already knew Fiennes socially and approached him directly. Fiennes was initially uncertain, so he visited the production and watched the daily footage. By the time the screening ended, he had agreed. That story captures the casting perfectly. Voldemort was not sold through costume sketches or franchise promises. He was sold through the world the actors had already created. Fiennes brought something more disturbing than obvious theatrical evil. He could be elegant one second and emotionally feral the next. Newell wanted a villain who felt psychologically alive rather than carved from a single expression, and Fiennes understood that Voldemort's cruelty needed volatility. His voice slips between intimate softness and sudden rage. His movements feel almost graceful until they become invasive. Watch him circle Harry in the graveyard. He does not merely threaten the boy. He performs for his followers, savoring his restored body like an actor reclaiming a stage. The casting transformed Voldemort from plot destination into personality. Brendan Gleeson faced the opposite problem as Alastor Mad Eye Moody. He had to appear suspicious enough to keep the mystery alive, trustworthy enough to become Harry's mentor, and eccentric enough that his strangest behavior could be dismissed as the habits of a damaged Auror. Gleeson reportedly had reservations about joining the franchise, with enthusiasm from his sons helping persuade him. That family connection feels oddly appropriate because his performance plays like a veteran actor crashing into a younger ensemble and immediately changing its temperature. He growls, limps, spits, and snaps chalk across the classroom. Subtlety is not the goal. Authority is. Yet Gleeson's casting contains a second performance hidden inside the first. He is technically playing Barty Crouch Jr. performing Mad Eye Moody, meaning every protective gesture carries concealed manipulation. The actor must make Harry, and the audience, accept behavior that will later look sinister in retrospect. His praise after the dragon task seems compassionate. His guidance toward the tournament solution seems helpful. Then the disguise falls away, and those same moments become grooming. Gleeson gives the film its most intricate acting puzzle without calling attention to the mechanism. The deception works because he never plays a villain pretending to be good. He plays a fanatic enjoying the role of mentor. Robert Pattinson arrived with far less experience when he was chosen as Cedric Diggory. He had appeared in Vanity Fair, only to discover that his scenes had been removed from the final cut. According to Pattinson, the casting director later brought him in for Goblet of Fire. After a short meeting with Newell, he became convinced that the role was his. Somehow that untested confidence matched Cedric. Pattinson carries himself like someone accustomed to being admired but not corrupted by it. The rare golden boy whose decency does not feel like another form of arrogance. Cedric could easily have become an obstacle inserted between Harry and victory. Pattinson makes him a moral counterweight instead. He is athletic, handsome, and publicly celebrated, but his defining quality is fairness. Even with limited screen time, the performance creates enough warmth for the graveyard's violence to feel obscene. Pattinson described Cedric as a quiet person who instinctively avoids cruelty, and that is exactly what survives on screen. His stillness separates him from the louder Hogwarts personalities. He does not demand attention. The camera gradually teaches us to trust him, and then the story weaponizes that trust. The international students required a different kind of casting. Stanislav Ianevsky was not pursuing an acting career when Weir noticed him and encouraged him toward an audition process. He was eventually selected to play Viktor Krum from hundreds of candidates. His physical presence does most of the dialogue's work. Krum enters as a sports celebrity surrounded by spectacle, then becomes unexpectedly shy around Hermione. Clémence Poésy, already experienced in French and British productions, gives Fleur Delacour an aristocratic composure that distinguishes her instantly from Hogwarts' anxious teenagers. The screenplay underuses both champions, but their casting makes the tournament feel international before the plot has time to prove it. Katie Leung's casting as Cho Chang carried perhaps the most immediate public pressure. She made her screen debut after a search involving thousands of hopefuls entering an established global phenomenon as Harry's first serious romantic interest. Leung's quietness works for a character seen largely through Harry's intimidated perspective. Cho seems distant because he cannot gather the courage to know her. The role offers little space beyond that function, but Leung creates a gentle awkwardness that keeps their interactions recognizably teenage rather than polished Hollywood romance. That was Newell and Weir's larger casting victory. They did not search for one uniform acting style. Fiennes brings classical menace, Gleeson controlled chaos, Pattinson understated decency, while the young international cast brings unfamiliarity and social disruption. Hogwarts suddenly feels larger, and Harry suddenly feels smaller inside it. But casting explains only why these performers entered the world. What matters next is what they did once the camera turned toward them, beginning with Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson at the exact moment their characters' childhood chemistry started to fracture. Casting placed the right faces inside Hogwarts, but Goblet of Fire asks those familiar faces to perform a difficult transformation in public. Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson had grown up alongside their characters, and the film no longer tries to hide it. Voices deepen, bodies become awkward, friendships develop sharp edges. Radcliffe described playing an older Harry as an opportunity to explore the extra emotions produced by adolescence, while Grint welcomed Ron becoming moodier and more argumentative. Their real maturation and the character's fictional maturation begin overlapping, giving the performances a texture no replacement actors could have manufactured. Daniel Radcliffe carries the heaviest dramatic burden because Harry spends most of the film being observed. The school watches him after the goblet chooses his name. Rita Skeeter converts him into public entertainment. Ron suspects him. The tournament audience cheers while adults repeatedly fail to explain why a 14-year-old has been placed in mortal danger. Radcliffe does not play this pressure through grand speeches. His Harry becomes guarded. His shoulders tighten, his responses shorten, and irritation flickers across his face whenever another person assumes he wanted the attention. Earlier, Harry often reacted to wonder. This Harry reacts to scrutiny. His strongest work before the climax comes during the argument with Ron. Radcliffe makes Harry's anger feel wounded rather than dominant. He is not merely furious that Ron doubts him. He is devastated that the one person who should understand his dislike of fame has joined the crowd. Watch the way Harry pushes his voice higher during the confrontation, as though volume might stop humiliation from becoming visible. Then Ron leaves, and the energy collapses. Radcliffe lets the silence expose what the shouting concealed. Harry is frightened, isolated, and too proud to ask his friend to stay. It is messy acting for a messy emotion. Exactly right. The tournament requires a more physical version of the character. During the dragon sequence, Radcliffe sells panic before courage. Harry scrambles across the rooftop, loses control of his broom, and survives through desperate improvisation rather than effortless heroism. The distinction matters. He never looks like an action star waiting for applause. Even underwater, surrounded by effects and elaborate creature design, his performance remains centered on Harry's instinct to rescue more people than the rules require. Radcliffe reportedly spent weeks working on the underwater material, an unusually demanding process that produced only small amounts of usable footage each day. That physical strain gives the second task a genuine sense of effort. Then the portkey carries him into the graveyard, and the performance changes. Radcliffe strips away nearly every trace of heroic confidence. Harry shakes, gasps, and crawls. When Cedric dies, the shock registers before grief because the event is too immediate for emotion to organize itself. The most effective moment comes after Harry returns to Hogwarts clutching Cedric's body. Everyone initially celebrates. Harry does not. His face has gone blank, his grip refuses to loosen, and when the truth finally reaches the crowd, his crying sounds uncontrolled rather than cinematic. This is the scene where Radcliffe proves he can carry the darker series ahead. Harry does not simply witness death, he brings it home. Rupert Grint has less dramatic material, but he may possess the trio's most natural comic timing. Ron's jealousy could have made him unbearable. Grint keeps him recognizable. His long pauses, sideways glances, and half-swallowed comments capture a teenager who wants attention but cannot admit that he wants it. During the dress robe sequence, embarrassment seems to infect every part of his body. At the Yule Ball, he sits folded into resentment, criticizing everyone because he cannot express the one fact bothering him. Hermione attended with somebody else. Contemporary critics repeatedly identified the school dance material as the film's most human element, and Grint's miserable defensiveness is a major reason it works. Grint also understands that Ron's cruelty comes from insecurity, not hatred. When he attacks Hermione for attending with Viktor Krum, his expression betrays him before the dialogue does. He looks hurt, then disguises that hurt as accusation. It is immature. It is unfair. It is painfully believable. His reconciliation with Harry after the first task works for the same reason. Ron cannot deliver an elegant apology, so Grint plays the moment through awkward fragments and mutual avoidance. Friendship survives, not because the boys suddenly become emotionally articulate, but because both recognize the apology hidden inside their terrible communication. Emma Watson receives the clearest emotional progression. Hermione begins as the trio's practical stabilizer, physically placing herself between Harry and Ron when their friendship fractures. Watson gives her frustration speed. Words arrive quickly, eyebrows tighten, and every movement suggests that she cannot believe two people she loves are behaving so foolishly. But the Yule Ball forces Hermione out of the role of mediator. For once, she wants to be seen rather than consulted. Her entrance down the staircase is staged as a revelation. Yet Watson's most important choice is the nervousness beneath the presentation. Hermione knows everyone is looking. She is not completely comfortable with it. The staircase gets the iconic image, but the argument afterward gives Watson the real scene. Hermione's anger rises in waves. She begins by defending her choice, then realizes that Ron's hostility is jealousy, and finally recognizes that he expected her to remain available until he found the courage to notice her. Watson allows humiliation and fury to occupy the same breath. Her voice cracks without weakening the character. When she tells Ron that he should ask her first next time, the line lands as accusation, confession, and heartbreak. A contemporary review praised Watson for capturing the gap between Hermione's growing emotional maturity and the boys' inability to recognize it. That is precisely what the performance achieves. Ralph Fiennes enters late, yet immediately changes the acting language of the film. Radcliffe, Grint, and Watson work through recognizable adolescent behavior. Fiennes seems to have abandoned ordinary human behavior altogether. His Voldemort glides, folds, and erupts. The voice can become almost tender when discussing murder, then snap into rage without warning. He treats the graveyard as theater, displaying Harry before the Death Eaters and luxuriating in their fear. Fiennes does not play Voldemort as emotionally empty. He plays him as addicted to control, humiliation, and the sensation of being watched. That choice gives Radcliffe something powerful to resist. Harry and Voldemort are not evenly matched in skill, physical authority, or experience. The scene works because Radcliffe plays survival, while Fiennes plays ownership. Voldemort believes the encounter already belongs to him. Harry's refusal to submit therefore becomes more meaningful than victory. Their duel establishes the central performance conflict for the remaining films. One actor embodying a boy terrified of death but capable of love, the other embodying a man who fears death so completely that he has destroyed everything human inside himself. Yet these lead performances do not operate alone. Every emotional turn depends on reactions surrounding them. Cedric's decency, Moody's manipulation, Snape's irritation, McGonagall's concern, and Neville's quiet vulnerability. The trio carries the story, and Fiennes detonates its ending, but the ensemble gives both sides weight. Even the strongest central performance needs other actors to create pressure around it, and Goblet of Fire surrounds its leads with some of the series' most distinctive supporting work. Even the strongest central performance needs pressure around it, and Goblet of Fire surrounds Harry with people pulling him in opposite directions. Some offer friendship, others provide guidance designed to become manipulation. A few barely understand him at all. The ensemble's achievement lies in making Hogwarts feel socially crowded while Harry becomes emotionally isolated. Mike Newell gives supporting actors room to arrive with forceful personalities, sometimes exaggerated almost to the edge of caricature. That broadness fits his vision of school as noisy theater. Everyone is performing confidence, authority, or maturity while hiding something more vulnerable underneath. Robert Pattinson gives the film its quietest important performance. Cedric Diggory is introduced as everything Harry is accused of wanting to be: handsome, admired, athletic, and publicly chosen as Hogwarts champion. Pattinson could have played him as a smug rival. Instead, he creates a young man almost embarrassed by his own popularity. His voice remains measured, his body language open. When Harry warns him about the dragons, Cedric does not treat the information as leverage. He repays the favor. Pattinson describes Cedric as reserved and fundamentally unwilling to be cruel, and that gentleness becomes the character's defining strength. That restraint matters because Cedric has surprisingly little screen time. The screenplay cannot give him the depth available in the novel, so Pattinson builds character through behavior. Cedric asks classmates to stop wearing humiliating anti-Harry badges. He helps Harry decipher the golden egg. Inside the maze, he is briefly corrupted by fear, yet recovers quickly enough to save Harry from Viktor Krum. Most crucially, he refuses to take the Triwizard Cup alone. His decency keeps interrupting the competition's demand for selfishness. Cedric does not die because of a tragic flaw. He dies because he enters somebody else's war while trying to share a victory. Brendan Gleeson dominates the ensemble through sheer physical invention. His mad-eye Moody lurches into scenes as if permanently prepared to attack the furniture. The magical eye spins independently, the wooden leg pounds against stone, and his speech lands in aggressive bursts. Gleeson's sons help persuade him to accept the role, which explains the amusing contrast between his initial hesitation and the enormous pleasure visible in the finished performance. He does not politely join the Potter universe. He storms through it. But Gleeson's real trick is making Moody both alarming and comforting. His classroom demonstration of the unforgivable curses is ethically horrifying, especially when Neville's distress becomes obvious. Yet he is also the first teacher who appears to take Harry's danger seriously. He recognizes Neville's aptitude. He punishes Draco's cruelty. He pushes Harry towards solutions when other adults merely discuss rules. Every helpful act establishes trust, which makes the revelation of Barty Crouch Jr.'s disguise feel like a personal violation. Gleeson has been playing mentorship as predation, the villain guiding Harry towards survival only because survival is required for the trap. David Tennant appears briefly as the real Barty Crouch Jr., but brevity becomes part of his impact. Tennant acknowledged that the role was relatively small and that he spent little time working with the young leads. He compensates by making every second unstable. The crouched posture, hungry stare, and reptilian tongue movement provide Gleeson with physical details to echo, connecting the two performances before the script explains their relationship. Tennant does not attempt psychological realism. He gives us fanaticism with the skin removed, raw devotion, resentment, and barely contained delight at Voldemort's return. Miranda Richardson operates in a completely different register as Rita Skeeter. Richardson was announced alongside Ralph Fiennes during the film's major expansion of the cast, and her experience with heightened comedy makes her a perfect fit for Newell's broader social world. Rita turns journalism into physical intrusion. Her voice purrs, her smile freezes, and her quill transforms private discomfort into profitable melodrama. She barely listens because she has already decided what story she wants. Richardson makes Rita funny without making her harmless. The character understands that controlling Harry's public image can be another form of violence. The returning veterans maintain Hogwarts' familiar foundation while allowing cracks to appear. Alan Rickman's Snape continues treating irritation like a fine art. His brief sequence smacking Harry and Ron with a book says more about classroom exhaustion than pages of dialogue could. Maggie Smith gives McGonagall's dance lesson a wonderful collision of strictness and suppressed amusement. Robbie Coltrane lets Hagrid's courtship of Madame Maxime expose unexpected vanity and tenderness. Michael Gambon, meanwhile, plays Dumbledore with sharpened urgency. His choices are more volatile than many viewers prefer, but they reinforce the sense that even Hogwarts' greatest authority cannot control the forces gathering around Harry. Matthew Lewis quietly provides the ensemble's most affecting background work. Neville begins as comic discomfort, dancing alone in his dormitory and returning from the Yule Ball delighted while everyone else looks emotionally defeated. Then, Moody's lesson exposes the history beneath that awkwardness. Lewis watches the Cruciatus Curse with rigid silence, his face tightening as the spider is tortured. No explanatory speech arrives. None is needed. The reaction connects Neville's shy exterior to the damage inflicted on his parents, rewarding viewers who know the history while communicating pain to those who do not. And then Jeff Rawle receives the moment that converts Cedric's death from plot into grief. Amos Diggory's cry over his son's body tears through the tournament celebration. Rawle does not polish it. The sound is ugly, repetitive, and almost unbearable. The noise of a parent encountering a reality language cannot contain. Around him, the entire ensemble changes. Celebration stops. Teachers freeze. Students finally understand that the tournament was never the real danger. The supporting cast has spent the film enlarging Harry's world. In this instant, they make its loss visible. That loss is surrounded by extraordinarily detailed physical environments, from the tournament arenas to the Yule Ball, and every one of those spaces was designed to carry the story before anyone spoke. That loss is surrounded by extraordinarily detailed physical environments, because Goblet of Fire treats design as emotional architecture. Hogwarts begins as a place the audience already understands. Warm common rooms, ancient stone corridors, floating candles, and familiar school tables. Then foreign students arrive, enormous tournament structures rise from the landscape, and the Great Hall freezes into a palace for the Yule Ball. The castle has not simply grown larger, it has become socially intimidating. Production design turns Harry's adolescence into geography. Every room suddenly feels crowded with strangers, expectations, and dangers he cannot control. Production designer Stuart Craig and set decorator Stephen E. McMillan carried visual continuity from the earlier films. But the fourth story demanded far more transformation than simple expansion. Craig had designed Hogwarts from the beginning, establishing its Gothic towers, irregular passageways, and sense of accumulated history. That consistency matters. New spectacle can appear without making the series feel as though it has entered an unrelated fantasy world. The Triwizard Tournament arrives from outside, yet every new structure still appears to belong beside the battered stone, dark timber, and medieval weight of Hogwarts. Craig's achievement is controlled evolution, familiar enough to feel permanent, flexible enough to keep surprising us. The Yule Ball provides the art department's most elegant transformation. Macmillan and her team reimagined the Great Hall as an ice palace, replacing its usual warmth with reflective silver surfaces, frosted food, wintry decorations, and sculpted ice. Warner Brothers records that 90 people helped decorate the hall for the sequence. Look at what that change accomplishes emotionally. The Great Hall is normally communal, almost domestic despite its size. Here it becomes formal and exposed. Light bounces off every surface. Students accustomed to disappearing inside black uniforms can suddenly be inspected from every direction. Beautiful? Certainly. Comfortable? Not remotely. Costume designer Janie Temmie deepens that discomfort by allowing clothing to reveal each character's relationship with adulthood. More than 300 costumes were designed for the Yule Ball, requiring over 100 additional costume workers. Hermione's gown took 3 months to create, using pink silk and 12 meters of chiffon. Ron's robes, by contrast, were constructed from old carpet-like fabric and an assault of lace. The joke lands before Ron says anything. Hermione's dress moves with her, announcing possibility. Ron's outfit seems to have trapped him inside his family's past. Costume becomes class, confidence, and emotional readiness stitched into fabric. Hermione's pink gown also represents a deliberate departure from the novel's periwinkle blue description. Temmie wanted the dress to feel as though it belonged to Hermione herself rather than something borrowed from an older relative. That distinction saves the moment from becoming a generic makeover. Hermione has not been transformed into somebody else. The film finally allows the room to notice what was already present. Ron's reaction completes the design. He sees the dress, then sees Viktor beside it, and instantly understands that Hermione possesses a life beyond waiting for him to mature. The visiting schools are designed through immediate visual opposition. Bosbaitens arrives in flowing French blue silk with pointed hats created by milliner Philip Triacy, standing apart from Hogwarts' blacks, browns, and grays. Durmstrang enters in heavy crimson, fur, and military silhouettes. One group appears to move like air, the other lands like an occupying force. These designs are broad, almost theatrical national shorthand, but they perform necessary storytelling at speed. Before Fleur or Viktor speaks, we understand how Hogwarts students perceive them. Elegant outsiders on one side, disciplined physical rivals on the other. The first task replaces social exposure with physical terror. Craig's team built the Dragon Arena as a huge rock quarry set in 2 sections at Leavesden, creating fractured levels for Harry to climb, fall across, and escape. Craig called it one of the largest sets the series had constructed at that point. The rough stone serves a purpose beyond scale. There is nowhere soft to land. Every surface looks capable of breaking bone, while the surrounding stands convert mortal danger into school entertainment. Harry fights for survival inside a space designed like a sporting venue. That contradiction makes the task unsettling even before the Hungarian horntail escapes its chain. The second task demanded an entirely different world. The production built a blue-screen water tank approximately 20 feet deep and 60 feet square, holding around 500,000 gallons. Framestore then contributed to more than 200 visual effects shots across the film, including the underwater material and Bogsbaten's flying carriage. What sells the Black Lake is the mixture of physical and digital design. Radcliffe's movement has real underwater resistance, while drifting plants, distant ruins, merpeople, and blue-green darkness expand the tank into an ecosystem. The space feels ancient, cold, and indifferent to human lungs. Then comes the maze. The tournament stripped to its cruelest form. Physical hedge walls reportedly ranged from roughly 20 to 40 feet and were extended or manipulated with computer imagery. Unlike the novel's maze, the film removes many magical creatures and lets the environment itself become the monster. The hedges shift, seal paths, and crush the space around the champions. No cheering crowd remains visible. No teacher can be trusted to intervene. Design turns a school competition into a corridor of psychological isolation, preparing Harry for the graveyard waiting beyond the cup. Smaller objects keep the spectacle grounded. The scarred golden egg looks ceremonial but screams when opened. Rita Skeeter's quill is delicate, decorative, and predatory. Moody's long coat appears sun-bleached, damaged, and lived in, as though its owner has dragged it through decades of violent history. Even the goblet itself combines twisted roots, carved wood, and blue flame, suggesting something older than the institution attempting to regulate it. These props do not merely decorate scenes. They carry personalities. In this world, objects judge, expose, deceive, and occasionally lure children toward death. Craig, Macmillan, and Temmie make the fourth film feel both richer and less welcoming. Silk, ice, stone, water, and living hedges all express the same transition. Harry's world is expanding faster than his ability to master it. But sets do not determine what the audience notices by themselves. Someone must decide where the camera stands, how darkness falls across those surfaces, and when spectacle should overwhelm the frame. That responsibility belonged to cinematographer Roger Pratt, whose images would give the film its restless, storm-darkened pulse. Someone must decide where the camera stands, how darkness falls across those surfaces, and when spectacle should overwhelm the frame. That responsibility belonged to Roger Pratt, returning after photographing Chamber of Secrets. The comparison between his two Potter films is revealing. His earlier entry preserves the warm, storybook clarity established by Chris Columbus. Goblet of Fire keeps enough of that visual identity to remain recognizable, then steadily drains away its comfort. Skies turn metallic. Torchlight struggles against shadow. Faces disappear inside crowds. Pratt does not photograph Hogwarts as a sanctuary being attacked from outside. He photographs a sanctuary already developing darkness within its walls. Pratt was an inspired bridge between fantasy spectacle and human unease. His career moved freely from Terry Gilliam's distorted worlds in Brazil and 12 Monkeys to the gothic scale of Batman, the romantic textures of Chocolat, and the battlefield grandeur of Troy. His collaborators repeatedly praised his ability to solve practical problems while keeping the imagery focused on character and drama. That combination suited Goblet of Fire, a production requiring enormous visual effects sequences, without allowing Harry's emotional experience to disappear beneath them. Pratt could photograph scale. More importantly, he understood how scale could make a person look frightened. The film's opening establishes that philosophy immediately. Frank Bryce walks through darkness toward the Riddle House, illuminated by little more than moonlight, windows, and the weak beam of his own torch. The camera follows at a cautious distance, making him appear exposed inside the frame. When the scene enters Voldemort's room, Pratt avoids offering a comfortable view. Figures remain partially hidden. Nagini slides through foreground darkness. The audience receives fragments, movement, flame, silhouettes, before the killing curse floods the image with unnatural green. Light does not reveal safety here. It announces violence. Compare that beginning with the Quidditch World Cup. The campsite is warm, crowded, and almost overexposed with excitement. The stadium glows like a magical cathedral, its vertical structure filling the wide frame while thousands of spectators become patterns of movement and color. Then the Death Eaters attack, and the visual grammar breaks apart. Camera movement becomes unstable. Flames erase depth. Characters run across the lens rather than neatly through composed spaces. The sequence does not invite us to admire destruction. It places us at child height inside confusion, where every adult body becomes an obstruction and every direction looks equally dangerous. Pratt's framing repeatedly converts public spectacle into private anxiety. When the goblet selects Harry, the Great Hall is arranged around lines of sight. Students stare from long tables. Teachers occupy the raised platform. Harry walks through an open central space with nowhere to hide. The hall is enormous, yet the composition makes it feel like a courtroom. Later, Rita Skeeter pulls him into a cramped broom cupboard, and the visual pressure changes shape. The crowd disappears, but the camera moves uncomfortably close as Rita invades Harry's personal space. Wide exposure or tight confinement, the result is the same. Harry is being watched and interpreted by others. The first task gives Pratt the film's clearest demonstration of large-scale action photography. The sequence begins with broad views establishing the quarry, the audience, and the distance separating Harry from the golden egg. Once the Horntail attacks, those clean spatial relationships collapse. The camera follows Harry across broken rock, loses him behind structures, and races after him when the dragon escapes the arena. Hogwarts, normally photographed as solid and permanent, suddenly becomes an obstacle course of collapsing roofs and narrow towers. The flight gains excitement from speed, but tension comes from geography. Harry is always one turn away from losing the castle's protection completely. The underwater task demands the opposite rhythm. Movement slows. Color compresses into blue, green, and gray. Sunlight reaches down in pale shafts, but visibility deteriorates with distance, making the lake appear far larger than the physical filming environment. Pratt and the effects team needed Harry to look natural within the underwater world rather than pasted onto it. Testing approaches until performance, lighting, and digital extension could occupy the same visual space. The result is eerie rather than merely beautiful. Harry floats inside an environment that appears calm while constantly threatening to suffocate him. Every graceful movement costs oxygen. The Yule Ball introduces the film's most romantic lighting, yet even here, Pratt refuses uncomplicated warmth. Silver decorations and icy surfaces reflect cool light across the Great Hall, turning the dance into a polished dream that exposes every awkward gesture. Hermione receives the softest visual entrance of the film, descending the staircase while the background falls gently away. Ron, meanwhile, is frequently framed at the edge of the celebration, surrounded by moving couples but emotionally stranded. When the argument erupts afterward, the glittering environment becomes almost cruel. The room looks ready for romance. The characters are not. That contrast prepares the graveyard, where spectacle is stripped of celebration. The palette becomes sickly and drained, dominated by wet stone, smoke, black robes, and Voldemort's pale body. Pratt frequently places Harry low in the composition or pins him against monumental objects. The statue, the cauldron, the grave, so the environment itself appears to participate in his imprisonment. Voldemort receives wider movement and greater control of the frame. Harry receives fractured close-ups, obstructions, and desperate shifts of focus. Their power imbalance is not only performed, it is built into the image. Pratt's greatest visual achievement may be the return to Hogwarts after Cedric's death. The portkey lands amid bright tournament colors and cheering spectators, creating a hideous collision between two photographic worlds. For several seconds, the crowd reads Harry and Cedric's bodies as part of the victory. Then recognition spreads. The camera closes in. Color remains, music continues, and celebration collapses inside the frame. The visual horror comes from normality refusing to disappear quickly enough. That is Pratt's signature across the film. Wonder and danger occupying the same image until one contaminates the other. His cinematography gives Goblet of Fire movement, texture, and scale, but it also charts the disappearance of safety. What the camera makes visible, however, the soundtrack makes unavoidable. Dragons roar, water muffles the world, crowds become emotional weapons, and Patrick Doyle's music carries the series into territory John Williams' themes could no longer enter alone. What the camera makes visible, the soundtrack makes unavoidable. Goblet of Fire begins with a problem no previous Potter film had faced. How do you replace John Williams without making the wizarding world sound as though it has lost its soul? Williams had scored the first 3 films, creating themes so deeply fused with Hogwarts that a few Celesta notes could summon the entire series. Scheduling prevented him from returning for the 4th entry, leaving Patrick Doyle to respect that musical inheritance while establishing a darker identity of his own. He keeps the door open to the past. Then he marches somewhere harsher. Doyle was a natural collaborator for Mike Newell, having previously scored Donnie Brasco. His musical personality differed sharply from Williams. Williams often makes magic sparkle through intricate orchestral movement. Doyle tends to write in bold, emotional declarations. Strong melodies, muscular brass, and strings that press directly against the heart. He inherited Hedwig's theme, but used it sparingly, reshaping its appearance into something more ominous. The familiar melody no longer promises uncomplicated wonder. It sounds like childhood remembered from the edge of danger. Doyle later recalled the immense pressure surrounding the franchise and how rigorously Newell pushed him throughout the scoring process. That shift can be heard in the tournament music. Doyle gives the Triwizard competition ceremonial weight through pounding percussion, rising brass, and rhythms that resemble a public march. The champions are not merely students entering games. The score presents them like national representatives walking into ritual combat. Music enlarges school pride into something almost militaristic. During the first task, orchestral momentum surges beneath the Horntails' attacks, but the cue rarely makes Harry feel invincible. Brass announces the scale of the threat while frantic strings preserve his panic. Heroism arrives through survival, not domination. The score, recorded at Air Lyndhurst Studios, performed by the London Symphony Orchestra and conducted by James Shearman, was built around new thematic material. For the tournament, Voldemort and Harry's feelings for Cho Chang. The gentlest of those ideas appears in Harry in Winter. Its strings do not treat his crush as comic decoration. They give adolescent longing genuine sadness. When Harry approaches Cho, the melody holds hope and embarrassment in the same breath. He is preparing for possible rejection, yet still imagines a different answer. Doyle understands that, to a teenager, asking someone to a dance can feel like walking toward a dragon without a wand. The Yule Ball lets music exist inside the story rather than only around it. Formal orchestral dance music initially matches the frozen elegance of the Great Hall, guiding students through movements they have rehearsed without understanding. Once the Weird Sisters take over, the atmosphere changes. Do the Hippogriff? This is the night, and magic works drag Hogwarts into something resembling a school rock concert, with the final song softening the room into romantic melancholy. The soundtrack album includes all three pieces as its closing tracks. The contrast is perfect. Ceremonial adulthood gives way to sweaty teenage chaos, then ends in feelings nobody can communicate properly. Sound design makes each tournament task inhabit a different physical reality. The Hungarian horntail is built from impact. Wing beats, scraping claws, chains dragged across stone, and a roar heavy enough to give the creature mass before it fills the frame. The surrounding crowd creates another layer of pressure. Cheers rise when Harry succeeds, then fracture into alarm when the dragon escapes. Hogwarts has turned a child's possible death into entertainment, and the soundtrack refuses to let us forget the spectators. Their excitement makes the sequence thrilling. Their presence also makes it morally uncomfortable. The Black Lake reverses everything. Above water, students shout and music prepares the competition. Below the surface, sound becomes muffled, stretched, and directionless. Harry's breathing dominates until the gillyweed transformation removes even that familiar rhythm. Movement produces soft currents rather than sharp impacts. The Merpeople's song reaches him as a reverberating human-like voice, beautiful enough to attract and strange enough to warn him away. We hear the inhabitants before we fully see them, allowing sound to define the lake as an occupied world rather than empty blue space. Voldemort's return brings Doyle's darkest material. Low voices, heavy brass, and unstable orchestral movement strip the graveyard of adventure. The music does not celebrate the villain's rebirth. It seems to recoil from it. Yet the sequence's most frightening sounds remain intimate. Wormtails, gasps, bones striking the cauldron, fabric shifting around the gathered Death Eaters, and Voldemort speaking softly beside Harry's face. Loudness would create distance. Near whispers create violation. Voldemort controls the space because everyone else listens. Then Cedric dies, and music briefly loses its ability to protect the audience. The killing curse hits with brutal speed. No heroic fanfare prepares us. When Harry returns with the body, the tournament band continues playing because the musicians believe they are welcoming a champion. Celebration becomes unbearable before it stops. Doyle's lament enters only after recognition spreads, allowing Amos Diggory's cries to tear through the scene without emotional decoration. This is where the film earns its darkness. Sound does not tell us that death is tragic. It lets happiness continue for several horrible seconds until grief destroys it. Doyle's score gives Goblet of Fire an identity that is romantic, ceremonial, and increasingly fatalistic. It honors the musical world Williams created without becoming an imitation of it. More importantly, sound completes the film's transition from childhood fantasy to open conflict. But producing those dragons, underwater performances, enormous sets, and shifting musical worlds required a shoot filled with logistical strain, physical risk, and improvisation. Behind the finished spectacle lies a production journey almost as unruly as the tournament itself. Behind the finished spectacle lies a production journey almost as unruly as the tournament itself. Goblet of Fire was not merely another year at Hogwarts, with several new creatures added. It was a physical expansion of the entire filmmaking operation. Larger sets, longer effects sequences, international crowds, underwater photography, and 3 action set pieces requiring completely different technical languages. Editor Mick Audsley described a 52-week shoot and a 70-week commitment for his department, during which the production exposed roughly 1.9 million feet of film. Those numbers capture the scale, but not the daily reality. Every magical minute had to be assembled from months of intensely practical labor. Leavesden Studios remained the production's industrial heart, where old Hogwarts environments could coexist with newly constructed tournament arenas. That continuity was essential. Stuart Craig's standing sets gave Mike Newell a functioning school to direct within, while enormous additions could be built, destroyed, or submerged nearby. The first task alone required a vast artificial quarry assembled in separate sections. The maze used towering physical hedge walls enlarged through digital work. The Black Lake required a specially constructed blue-screen tank, approximately 20 feet deep and 60 feet square, containing around 500,000 gallons of water. Each task could almost have belonged to a different movie. The underwater sequence became the production's defining endurance test. Daniel Radcliffe had to learn scuba diving, perform without his glasses, and communicate through hand signals while acting inside a world that would not fully exist until post-production. He later estimated that the 6-week underwater shoot sometimes produced only about 5 seconds of usable material per day. During training, he mishandled a basic regulator exercise, forgot the breath needed to clear it, and urgently signaled to be taken to the surface. The incident ended safely, but it exposed how quickly fantasy could become physically real. A calm face underwater required enormous concentration above it. Safety divers surrounded Radcliffe during filming, sometimes hidden in costumes or positioned just outside the frame. Stunt performer Dominic Priest recalled wearing camouflage-like suits, while crew members pulled at Radcliffe's legs to simulate creatures and simultaneously monitored him for danger. That dual role captures the strange engineering of the sequence. The same person might be manufacturing a threat and protecting the actor from it. Radcliffe's eventual 40-plus hours underwater were divided into carefully controlled fragments, yet the finished scene feels continuous. The difficulty disappears. That is the peculiar triumph of effects filmmaking. The more exhausting the process becomes, the more effortless the illusion must appear. Framestore then expanded those fragments into the Black Lake, completing more than 200 shots across the film. Its work included the underwater creatures and environments, the Bogsbaten's carriage, and Rita Skeeter's self-riding quill. The strongest visual effects work does not announce where reality ends. Radcliffe's real body moves through actual water, while digital weeds, ruins, and merpeople extend the space beyond the tank. The audience accepts the lake because physical resistance remains visible in his movements. Hair drifts, fabric pulls, momentum changes. Digital scale is anchored to bodily truth. The dragon task demanded another balance between practical performance and computer-generated danger. Radcliffe completed wire work, jumps, and physical reactions against environments constructed to give the action weight. The Hungarian horntail could be created digitally, but Harry's exhaustion could not. Newell keeps the actor scrambling over rock, sliding across rooftops, and colliding with surfaces so that the dragon never feels like an isolated animation demonstration. The production's stunt philosophy repeatedly follows this pattern. Let the magical element remain impossible, but make the human response painfully tangible. Radcliffe later emphasized how much hands-on stunt work the tournament required, including wire-assisted portkey sequences as well as the underwater material. Newell's own directing style was equally physical, occasionally more physical than wisdom recommended. While staging a scuffle involving the Weasley twins, he felt the young actors were not fighting with enough conviction and stepped in to demonstrate. One of the Phelps twins followed his lead with rather too much enthusiasm, sending the director down and cracking several of his ribs. Newell continued working, but the story became a perfect miniature of his approach. He did not want clean, decorative school comedy. He wanted adolescent chaos with elbows, weight, and embarrassment. Unfortunately, he briefly became the practical effect. That energy helped the younger cast behave less like protected franchise stars and more like students sharing an unruly school year. Newell encouraged overlapping reactions, broad physical comedy, and emotional roughness. The Yule Ball depends on choreographed formality, yet its best moments emerge when that formality breaks. Ron sulking, Harry watching Cho, Hermione fleeing the argument. Choreographer Wayne McGregor designed the formal movement, but Newell was interested in what happened when teenagers failed to inhabit it gracefully. The awkwardness had to be carefully rehearsed without looking rehearsed. The strange contradiction at the center of nearly every convincing school dance. The production's greatest challenge, however, was editorial rather than physical. With so many characters, locations, and effects units generating material, Audsley had to preserve narrative velocity without reducing the film to an action reel. 5 interconnected Avid editing systems handled the extraordinary volume of footage. Scenes were often evaluated according to whether they strengthened Harry's journey toward the graveyard. That principle explains both the movie's propulsion and its omissions. Expensive material could not survive merely because it looked impressive. The final cut had to move from celebration to suspicion, comedy to terror, and childhood to bereavement without losing the audience inside the machinery. What emerged from that year of construction, diving, wire work, and constant restructuring was a film that feels breathless because its production was breathless. The technical teams built spectacle on an industrial scale, while Newell kept searching for human awkwardness inside it. That combination turned the 4th Potter film into more than a franchise continuation. It became an event, and audiences responded as though attending one. The next story lies in the numbers: a huge opening, exceptional international demand, and a worldwide total that confirmed the series had grown beyond blockbuster success into something closer to cultural inevitability. The next story lies in the numbers, and Goblet of Fire opened less like a 4th installment than a franchise discovering a new gear. Released domestically on November 18, 2005, the film earned approximately $102.7 million from 858 theaters during its first weekend. At the time, that was the largest opening in the Harry Potter series, surpassing the launches of all 3 earlier films. More than 4 years after audiences first entered Hogwarts, curiosity had not weakened. It had intensified. Warner Brothers had turned each school year into an appointment, and the 4th appointment felt too consequential to miss. That opening represented more than brand loyalty. Prisoner of Azkaban had earned about $93.7 million during its domestic debut 1 year earlier, meaning Goblet of Fire increased the opening despite arriving with a longer running time, a darker tone, and more frightening material. Conventional franchise logic suggests diminishing novelty. Audiences know the world, the marketing rhythms, and the basic promise. This series behaved differently. Every new novel had expanded the mythology before its film adaptation arrived, allowing the movies to sell progression rather than repetition. Viewers were not returning for another interchangeable adventure. They were returning to see what Harry had become. The estimated production budget was $150 million, a figure visible in nearly every frame. The Dragon Chase, the Underwater Kingdom, the Quidditch Stadium, the Yule Ball, and Voldemort's physical return. During its original theatrical run, the film earned roughly $290 million domestically and $606 million internationally, producing a worldwide total of about $895.9 million. That is almost 6 times the reported production budget, although box office gross should never be confused with studio profit. Theaters retain part of ticket revenue, and marketing and distribution costs sit beyond the production figure. Even with those cautions, this was not merely profitable. It was an industrial-scale success. Its domestic performance also showed respectable staying power. Dividing the original domestic total by the opening weekend produces a multiplier of roughly 2.82. For a heavily anticipated sequel opening above $100 million, that is a solid result. Fan demand created the initial explosion, but general audiences and repeat viewers kept the film alive through the holiday season. The release date helped position it as a major Thanksgiving and Christmas attraction, while the film itself offered enough tonal variety to serve several audiences at once. Fantasy spectacle for children, adolescent romance for teenagers, and increasingly serious drama for adults who had followed the series from the beginning. The international numbers tell the larger story. approximately 67. 6% of the original worldwide gross came from outside the domestic market. Harry Potter was no longer simply a British story financed and distributed by an American studio. It had become a shared global language. The Triwizard Tournament strengthened that perception by introducing foreign schools and international wizarding culture directly into the narrative. Bogsbatons and Durmstrang may receive limited characterization, but commercially they reinforce the scale of the world. Hogwarts is no longer the whole magical universe. It is one institution inside something much larger, and international audiences responded accordingly. By the end of its original run, Goblet of Fire ranked as the highest-grossing worldwide release of 2005, ahead of Star Wars, Episode III, Revenge of the Sith, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, The Witch, and the Wardrobe and War of the Worlds. That victory is especially revealing because 2005 was hardly a quiet year for franchise filmmaking. Harry competed against the conclusion of George Lucas's prequel trilogy, a major Steven Spielberg science fiction production, and another enormously popular fantasy adaptation. Yet the boy wizard finished on top. Voldemort's return did not narrow the audience. It made the series feel essential. Domestically, the film placed behind Revenge of the Sith for the year, earning around $290 million during its original release, compared with the Star Wars film's roughly $380 million. The worldwide reversal demonstrates where Harry Potter's greatest commercial strength lived. Its popularity crossed borders with unusual consistency. American performance was enormous. International performance turned enormous into dominant. That balance gave Warner Brothers confidence that the remaining, darker novels could be adapted without softening their central conflicts to preserve family appeal. The commercial afterlife continued beyond theaters. The film reached home video in March 2006, and the numbers estimates more than $222 million in domestic DVD sales, with additional Blu-ray revenue arriving later. Those estimates should be treated as industry tracking rather than audited studio accounts, but they indicate the scale of repeat ownership during the peak DVD era. Fans did not merely watch the film once. They bought it, replayed it, and folded it into a growing home collection designed to continue for years. Later theatrical reissues pushed the film's reported lifetime worldwide total beyond $900 million. That milestone is satisfying, but the more meaningful achievement had already occurred in 2005. The fourth film proved that creative change did not threaten the franchise's commercial foundation. A new director, a new composer, teenage conflict, and the story's first devastating death all arrived without weakening audience demand. Darkness became a selling point because it promised growth. But money can only measure how many people entered the theater, not what they thought once the lights came up. Critics admired the momentum, performances, and spectacle, while questioning the ruthless compression of Rowling's novel. Some viewers embraced the darker transition. Others missed the detail and patience left behind. The box office delivered a decisive verdict on popularity. Critical reception would produce a far more complicated argument about quality. The box office delivered a decisive verdict on popularity. Critical reception produced a more complicated argument about quality. But the argument was far more positive than the film's reputation among book purists sometimes suggests. Goblet of Fire currently holds an 88% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, while its audience score sits lower at 74%. Metacritic records an even stronger critical average of 81 from 38 reviews, classified as universal acclaim, alongside a 7.9 user score. For a fourth franchise installment adapting a beloved and extremely dense novel, those numbers represent remarkable approval. Critics largely accepted the compression because the movie moved. Some fans never forgave what it left behind. The strongest reviews focused on Mike Newell's ability to balance tones that should have fought each other. Roger Ebert praised the film's movement between school comedy, teenage romance, and the approaching darkness of Voldemort, arguing that Newell's varied experience served the material well. He admired the action because it possessed purpose rather than functioning as empty destruction, and he considered the film the strongest Potter entry up to that point. He later included it among his notable films of 2005, That enthusiasm makes sense. The film does not merely alternate between embarrassment and terror. It understands that at 14, both can feel equally catastrophic. Peter Bradshaw's contemporary review for The Guardian responded to the same mixture. He praised Newell's forward drive, the adolescent transformation of the central characters, and the emotional confidence of the Yule Ball material. Brendan Gleeson's Mad Eye Moody also emerged as a critical favorite, partly because his performance gave the film personality between effects-heavy tournament sequences. For Bradshaw, Newell's greatest success was not simply darkening Hogwarts. It was making Harry, Ron, and Hermione feel recognizably older. Their romantic confusion and wounded pride stopped the movie from becoming a 2.5-hour parade of magical obstacles. Not every critic found that balance convincing. Philip French argued that the visual effects produced more exhaustion than wonder, and regarded the Yule Ball as padding in an already overlong film. His criticism identifies the central risk of the adaptation. Goblet of Fire is simultaneously overcrowded and incomplete. It races through political intrigue, family histories, and supporting characters, then pauses for dancing, dress robes, and jealousy. Viewers invested in plot mechanics can experience that pause as indulgence. Viewers invested in the characters may consider it the film's emotional center. The same material becomes either unnecessary delay or the reason the spectacle matters. Book readers had deeper reasons for frustration. The film removes Winky, Ludo Bagman, and Hermione's campaign for house elf rights. It reduces the Barty Crouch family tragedy, exposes Crouch Jr. far earlier, and transfers Dobby's crucial second task contribution to Neville. The third task becomes a threatening hedge maze rather than the novel's collection of magical creatures and riddles. These are not tiny cosmetic alterations. They simplify Rowling's portrait of a society where prejudice, institutional failure, and family shame prepare the ground for Voldemort's return. The movie preserves the destination while removing many of the roads that made arriving there feel inevitable. The loudest continuing controversy, however, may be Michael Gambon's delivery when Dumbledore confronts Harry about entering the tournament. In the novel, Dumbledore asks calmly. In the film, he charges across the room and grabs Harry with visible panic. The moment has become shorthand for adaptation betrayal because it reverses a clearly stated piece of characterization. Taken alone, it is a poor translation. Taken within Newell's movie, it belongs to a broader strategy of making every adult appear unsettled. The choice still feels excessive, but its survival as a joke proves something else. Audiences remember it because Gambon attacks the moment with unforgettable force. The film's awards recognition concentrated on the physical world rather than the acting or screenplay. Stuart Craig received the BAFTA for production design, a fitting reward for environments that could shift from icy romance to underwater dread without losing visual continuity. The film also earned an Academy Award nomination for art direction for Craig and set decorator Stephen E. McMillan. Its makeup and hair work received a BAFTA nomination, acknowledging a department responsible for everything from adolescent transformation to Voldemort's barely human appearance. The industry response confirmed what even skeptical critics admitted. Whatever had been sacrificed narratively, the Wizarding World remained extraordinarily convincing as a place. Time has complicated the film's standing rather than settling it. For viewers who value faithful adaptation, it can feel like the moment the series began rushing through Rowling's increasingly intricate world. For viewers approaching it primarily as cinema, its speed is part of the attraction. Few Potter films offer such variety. International pageantry, creature spectacle, romantic comedy, mystery, and outright horror, all contained within one school year. The tonal shifts can be abrupt. They are also honest to adolescence, where humiliation at a dance can dominate the world until genuine tragedy suddenly makes that humiliation seem impossibly small. That final rupture remains the source of the film's lasting power. Whatever critics thought about pacing, missing subplots, or directorial excess, Cedric's death changed what a Harry Potter movie could permit. The applause dies. A father screams. Harry returns from adventure carrying evidence that the old rules no longer apply. Critical reception recognized the film as an effective, darker sequel. Its legacy rests on something deeper. Goblet of Fire is the hinge of the entire series, the story where competition becomes conspiracy, childhood becomes memory, and death becomes permanent. Understanding why that transition still resonates requires looking past reception toward the themes underneath it and deciding where this unruly, wounded film finally belongs within the Potter saga. The film's finale, which requires full spoilers to discuss, reveals that the Triwizard Tournament was never really a competition. It was theater constructed around a murder attempt. Dragons, merpeople, riddles, and trophies distract everyone from the fact that Harry's path has been controlled from the moment his name leaves the goblet. That idea gives Goblet of Fire its darkest meaning. Talent cannot protect you when the rules themselves have been corrupted. Harry performs courageously, solves each challenge, and reaches the apparent reward. None of it saves him. The victory podium is a graveyard in disguise. That structure makes the goblet one of the series' most unsettling symbols. It appears ancient, impartial, and protected by binding magic. Adults trust its authority because tradition has taught them to do so. Yet Barty Crouch Jr. manipulates it, transforming a respected institution into the delivery mechanism for Voldemort's plan. The goblet does not become evil. It becomes useful to evil because nobody imagines its judgment can be compromised. The same pattern will spread through the later films. The Ministry, the press, and eventually Hogwarts itself will retain their official appearance while serving increasingly dangerous purposes. Harry's journey through the tournament also becomes a brutal education in the limits of fairness. Cedric repeatedly behaves honorably. He returns Harry's help, rejects public cruelty, and insists that they share the cup. In an ordinary heroic story, those qualities would earn survival. Here they place him beside Harry at exactly the wrong moment. Voldemort's servant kills him without ceremony because Cedric has no value within the villain's plan. No duel, no final speech, just an instruction to remove the spare. The casual language is the horror. A good person becomes disposable the instant power decides he is inconvenient. That is why Amos Diggory's grief lands harder than any monster attack. The tournament has taught the crowd to expect danger without consequence. Students watch dragons breathe fire as entertainment because adults have promised that safeguards exist. Cedric's body exposes that promise as fantasy. His death is not an exciting escalation. It is the moment spectacle becomes bereavement. Harry returns holding the human cost of everyone's complacency, and the film refuses to let the audience hide inside adventure. The image of a child carrying another child's corpse ends the comforting belief that bravery guarantees rescue. The graveyard also clarifies the central contrast between Harry and Voldemort. Both are orphans shaped by violence. Both possess unusual magical ability. Both fear death. Their difference lies in what they do with that fear. Voldemort treats attachment as weakness and pursues immortality through domination, mutilating his humanity to escape the fate shared by every living person. Harry survives through connection. His parents' sacrifice protects him, Cedric helps him reach the cup, and echoes of Voldemort's victims create the opening that allows him to escape. Voldemort builds power by reducing people to objects. Harry remains human because he refuses to do that. Even during the tournament, Harry's instinct is repeatedly communal rather than competitive. He warns Cedric about the dragons. He attempts to rescue every hostage from the lake, including Fleur's sister. He agrees to share the cup rather than claiming it alone. These decisions appear naive within a contest designed to produce one champion, but they define the moral logic of the series. Harry does not win because he is the strongest wizard in the room. He survives because he continues recognizing other lives as valuable, even when the surrounding system rewards selfishness. His compassion creates complications. It also prevents him from becoming Voldemort. Adolescence gives that moral conflict an intimate scale. Harry, Ron, and Hermione spend much of the film failing to understand their own emotions. Ron confuses jealousy with anger. Hermione discovers that maturity can make friendship more painful rather than less. Harry cannot explain his feelings to Cho or his fear to Ron. Their emotional confusion is sometimes comic, but it mirrors the larger story. They are losing control over their bodies, friendships, and public identities, just as the wizarding world loses control over the political threat returning beneath it. The Yule Ball and the Graveyard belong in the same film because both destroy the illusion that childhood relationships remain simple. The movie's weaknesses grow from the same source as its strengths. Its momentum is thrilling, but the compression damages the mystery and narrows Rowling's social world. Fleur and Viktor function more as vivid silhouettes than developed champions. Cedric needs more time before his death. The Barty Crouch storyline loses much of its tragedy, while the absence of Winky and the house elf material removes uncomfortable questions about who the magical community considers worthy of freedom. The third task sacrifices imaginative creatures for generic moving hedges. At times, the adaptation cuts so aggressively that emotional consequences arrive before their foundations feel complete. Yet as cinema, Goblet of Fire possesses a reckless vitality that the smoother entries sometimes lack. Mike Newell fills the frame with pushing crowds, bruised friendships, public embarrassment, and adults who appear increasingly incapable of maintaining order. Roger Pratt's cinematography turns celebration into threat. Patrick Doyle's score replaces childhood sparkle with ceremony and mourning. Stuart Craig's environments expand Hogwarts while making it feel less secure. The result is not the most faithful Potter adaptation, nor the most elegant. It may be the most volatile. Every few minutes, the film seems ready to become something else, and that instability mirrors Harry's life. Within the larger saga, Prisoner of Azkaban is often credited with darkening the visual world, but Goblet of Fire makes darkness irreversible. Earlier films allow Harry to confront danger and return to ordinary school life. This ending offers no restoration. Dumbledore tells the students what happened, yet even truth cannot revive Cedric or prevent the coming denial. The departing carriages and final goodbyes carry a strange hollowness because everyone knows the next year will not simply begin another adventure. Voldemort is back. Childhood does not pause for summer. My final verdict is that Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is an imperfect but essential hinge in the franchise. Its adaptation choices can frustrate, its pacing occasionally bruises the material, and some character work survives only in compressed form. But when it succeeds, it captures the exact instant a fantasy about discovering a magical world becomes a story about defending one. The film begins with cheering crowds and ends with a grieving school. Between those points, Harry learns that institutions can fail, victories can become traps, and goodness offers no immunity from loss. What goodness offers instead is a reason to resist. That is the lesson Voldemort cannot understand, and the reason Harry survives long enough to face him again.